Thank you. Hundreds of arrests, dozens of guns and drugs taken off the streets. That's the announcement made today after police, the marshals, and the sheriff's office joined forces in a major operation. We join Jordan Tovar live at Wichita City Hall with the details on this. Jordan.
Mike, they called this Operation Triple Beam, and like you said, it's multiple agencies teaming up to target those with outstanding warrants, especially violent offenders. And they say their work doesn't stop now.
This is not a one and done. This is a recurring initiative in Wichita and Sedgwick County.
That is the model. That is what we intend to keep doing.
They call it Operation Triple Beam. The target those with outstanding warrants and those that they deemed violent offenders. It wasn't just limited to that, though. The team seized over 2,000 grams of fentanyl and 76 guns.
Every one of those warrants represented a person who was evading accountability. Every firearm seized is one that cannot be used by a criminal to harm someone.
Part of the process for law enforcement was trying to figure out what their most dangerous cases were. Police say they use data that helped them determine which warrants are the highest risk.
We identify those people that are most likely to pull the trigger next, and then we focus on getting them off the street.
Some had concerns that the operation might appear as one related to immigration. U.S. Marshal Donald Miller says that's not the case.
This is not an enforcement operation, not an immigration operation. This is targeted arrest operation for warrants that are issued for the arrest of people who have criminal charges against them.
That doesn't mean that they won't arrest someone who is here illegally, but they want a warrant first.
We'll arrest an illegal immigrant, certainly, but that individual will have a criminal warrant signed by a judge in Sedgwick County, Kansas, or federal judge.
They said over the course of the operation, they made 607 arrests, with 402 of those being felony arrests. In Wichita, Jordan Tovar, 12 News.